Hi Maria.
Hi Christian.
So glad we have this opportunity to talk about Nils Erik Gjerdevik's works and Nils Erik.
Me too.
And
thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're director at Holtegaard and have worked with Nils Erik on an exhibition in 2015.
Exactly.
Art Deco. And I've been working for Nils Erik as an assistant, as you know, for many years, and knew him many years as well. And
you knew him quite well, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. In the beginning, I was actually an intern in NILS STÄRK's gallery, and got to know Nils Erik's works, and then I was studying at the university, art history, and just when they moved to new buildings, and Nils Erik made a very large commission in the new building, like 5 stories high, and it was an amazing work, and it was one of the first works of his that I saw and really were overwhelmed by. And then I saw X-Rummet, his exhibition there in the National Gallery, and I can't remember, I think I was actually writing a paper about him for the university, and then I was on the phone with him, and he just asked me if I knew anyone who would like to be an assistant for him and painting for him. And I said, I would like to do that. And he was, okay, just come. So the first day there was quite funny and quite overwhelming, because when I got into the studio, I clearly remember he was like, yeah, welcome, and if you start over here, and then there was a painting like quite the same height as this one, and then in a square format, and it was kind of like the painting was like a sibling to this one in a way, and earlier, and it was for Sorø Kunstmuseum in Norway, and the painting was already commissioned or sold, but not finished yet, and he was like, "Could you just start like here and just begin?" I was, sure, I've never done this before, so so I started out and quite nervous, and was just really concentrated, and I maybe painted like one of these in a day or something like that, and but I think that says a lot about him. His trust in other people and the responsibility you got, because when it was most hectic, we would be like 5 or 6 people out there, and there was work going on, different parts of the studio. One were doing drawings, and other one paintings, and he would walk around to each person, and then make his pencil drawings. So you had the next thing to fill out. And then he came back an hour or 2 later, and he could, you made it all here, and then he drew further on. And I think that was a way for him to keep going, to have these works that were like growing during the day, and that pressure on him was productive.
So the assistants kept him running, so to speak.
For sure. So he was circling around, and just continued, and he never used sketches. It was all just out of his head.
Really?
Every time.
There was
never
like a pre-sketch of anything.
No.
It was straight out of his mind, down to his hand, and then out there.
He was just...
That's impressive.
He just came to your station, and then he was like, "Oh, you made it here, okay," and then it should be like this and this, and then you had, 4 or 5 hours you could fill out.
But the architectural thing is interesting. I think that's kind of a red thread throughout his work, right? That he somehow was capable of thinking into space and scale. He wasn't afraid of of huge spaces and how to approach these spaces, which is normally every single artist would be kind of frightened to put the first dot on that such a big wall, for instance. But he actually did have a lot. Well, throughout his entire work, you see signs of architecture. even this big painting, I mean, of course it's made for a huge wall in a business building, but the entire pattern here is also, it's like scaffolding. I mean, he's organizing his painting by dividing it into grids and squares, which we know from architecture, right?
And you can say that it could, it could
it
evolve
extends
in
whatever kind of dimension,
sure.
basically, right? Christian, talking about scale, Nils Erik was also involved in a number of large-scale, site-specific works. One of them was Novo Nordisk. I'm not so familiar with the work. Could you tell me about how did that come about, and what did he do actually?
He got this like round
curved wall.
That was in like an office area, and he was asked to decorate it, commissioned to decorate it, and then he kind of his starting point was he took something from early on. I have a painting at home, which is like 40 centimeter and 230 or something, and that kind of stupid format. He worked on this very tall.
I have one as well,
narrow.
actually.
You do? Oh, okay, I thought I was okay.
The only one.
Okay, but these weird format that was something he went back to through the years, and for that commission at Novo, he chose to make, I don't know, 30, 40 of these paintings that were all 40 or 50 wide and then 2 meters.
I wanted to share with you a series of paintings that Nils Erik Gjerdevik made in 2013 for the new headquarters, global headquarters of Novo Nordisk. Nils Erik was not new to me. I had known him. I bought my first own work of Nils, ceramic work, in 1990. Later on, more acquisitions, basically of ceramics, very different from what you see today. But Nils Erik was always very different. He was always challenging. He was always trying to find new ways. So what does a Nils Erik Gjerdevik painting work look like? Hard question to answer, because they are not alike. They are not similar. They are not mass-produced. But they have some things in common, and that is Nils Erik's idea and passion of challenging ordinary painting, ordinary philosophy behind painting. If we look at, for instance, this one, this is so typical of Nils Erik, starting with a circle. You will find circles all over his places, and you will always find also that he's very interested in what happens out here, not so much in the big thing in here. It's what's happening here and what's happening when that thing moves up to there. That transformation, you'll see it everywhere. Then all of a sudden he can be very constructive, but yet again exploring the traditional style of painting. And who would believe that this was made by the same guy that made this? These paintings were ordered, commissioned by Novo Nordisk after Novo Nordisk's art historian Helle Ryberg had seen Nils Erik's works at the Utzon Center in Aalborg, a Danish provincial city. And Nils Erik came here and he first made 20 of these panels, working incredibly dedicated and generously to find something that would be suited very much for this place. Because at Novo Nordisk we've always had the philosophy in art that it's not a matter of decoration, it's not a matter of wallpaper, it's a matter of kicking you a little bit in the stomach and making you ask some questions so that we don't get into habitual thinking. And that's one thing Nils Erik stood for: no habitual thinking. Let's challenge things all the time. Come on here and have a look. Again, it's wrong to say two typical Nils Erik things, because there was nothing typical, yet his way of working is very typical. What brush strokes did he make here? Not very many. He would explore some things, and then he would splash, excuse the expression, some painting on, and then work it through up there. That's a very distant cousin to this painting, but again, you recognize Nils Erik's work with exploring the whole field, the whole plane, starting again at the outskirts and finding his way back. Where's the perspective? Where is the traditional storyline? It isn't there, because again, to Nils Erik, it was a question of all the time exploring the possibilities of painting, and I think that this set of panels is an extraordinary example upon his talent and his skill, and also to me emphasizes why we miss him so much in Danish and international art today.
As I remember him from earlier on, he was very concerned about the extremely controlled gesture.
Mm.
It was only later on, towards not really the end of his life, but very late, that he came up with the big splash, as I call them, these kind of very expressive gestures, which obviously do not have like a controlled contour.
I think it was kind of a mix in the beginning, and then he worked towards a more like strict expression and two colors, and he kind of took it to where this how much energy and how much you could get out of bringing two colors together, not only black and something else, but also green or red or orange, or and sometimes it was very fluorescent, or and so he kind of boiled it down to two colors, and before this painting he ended up in a period where everything was this totally strict drawing, and then he loosened it up again and made these bigger splashes, as you call them. So I think he liked this meeting with the, which in a way is the meeting between the, like in art history, you can talk about like spontaneous expressionism or abstract expressionism, and you can talk about geometrical and concept art or concrete
But it's
art.
all there. All of what you mentioned
kind of
now
mixed
is
these
actually
two things. Yeah,
all of it is there.
Yeah.
The entire art history is represented in his
Yeah, for
paintings,
sure.
Obviously.
Yeah.
He was very aware of his
the art
of his-
history
of
and
the-
for sure.
Yeah, but all these patterns, they do have, I mean, inspiration from they look like floral patterns. They look like even I remember the antique and Greek key patterns and all that. The thing that you actually see a system of them. They are repeated all over and over again. I think that throughout his work you also see the Art Deco, which is not really an ism. It was it was everywhere from the 1910s to the 1940s, at least in Denmark and all over Europe. Whereas all the other isms like futurism, Dadaism, expressionism, it was always an ism. It was always, they were leaning on a manifest somehow. It was, whereas the Art Deco movement, so to speak, wasn't programmatic at all. It was aesthetics. It was historical. It so to speak shopped around. They went back in time. They were sort of almost sci-fi in their ways using ornaments and floral lines. These lines you can see in his painting as well, always.
And in a way, you just describe Nils Erik's work or work method, in a way, I think. Because I remember when I have seen the most great Art Deco or Art Nouveau or Jugend architecture, depending on where in Europe you are, it has a different name. But it always reminds me of Nils Erik's paintings. I think it's a red thread throughout his work. For sure.
The Art Deco thing, which was also why we thought it was an interesting job to, when he came with Vibeke Petersen, who's a senior curator and an art historian, they two coupled up and said, well, we want to create this Art Deco show. And as a director of Holtegaard was kind of, well, that's really interesting. Our house is built in the 1756, an old building, Baroque gardens and everything. It was an interesting show to actually have in our place. And what was even more interesting was that, of course, it made sense that Nils Erik actually did or became a co-curator on an Art Deco show, because it was like, it was certainly a track or a red thread throughout his work. And what he did actually...
what did he do?
It was interesting. Actually, they had a long period of time where they just researched even more. Nils Erik obviously knew like quite a lot about Art Deco. I found out. Vibeke was doing the research on the works. Where were they? What was possible to actually? What kind of loans did we want and all that? And then Nils Erik, he actually did. He decided to do a backdrop for the exhibition. He decided to paint every room in a pastel color, and on top of that, like he does here, he would put a stripe in silver. And it was important that the silver wasn't gray. It shouldn't be a flat color. It should be silver. It should be a little bling silver. And when he first talked about that, I looked at him and said, Jesus, that sounds extremely expensive. No. You can have it for 40,000. You just go around the corner to my shop where I normally buy my colors, and it will work. And of course, we ended up paying double the amount, but it was worthwhile. It was fantastic, because what he actually did was he painted those stripes. And those stripes also sort of mimed or echoed the industrial aesthetics of the 1910s and 20s, and the luxury, the decadence, which was also very famous throughout the Art Deco movement. So it was extremely decorative, and became, you would think it would be very noisy background for the old paintings, but it wasn't. No. And he was not even he would never put everything on a band like that. He would have the paintings jump up and down on the stripes, which created a very, very special atmosphere in the rooms. And I'm pretty sure that because of his backdrop, you remember that exhibition even better, because it was designed and installed and mounted in a way that I've never seen before. And what was interesting about this collaboration between a visual artist and an art historian was that the art historians were a little bit boring, right? we will never come up with such a crazy pattern for a backdrop. And I've learned from Nils Erik that, well, in that little Baroque mansion we have up there in Gammelholte, well, everything goes. It cannot be too decadent. Actually, it works.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's
the
also
show,
because of the architecture there, obviously. Another thing with Nils Erik in that show, which I thought was amazing, was that we actually asked him. Well, Nils Erik, it came to us like bits and pieces that he knew incredibly lot about the Art Deco movement. So we asked him at one point, saying, well, would you be able to just write something about it? We do know that you don't really express yourself so much in writing, but since you do know so much about this, how would you feel about just like more like, it can be essayistic, it can be just notes, it can be just streams of consciousness of how you think of this. Would you do that? And he actually did. And he did the most beautiful little, almost like, funny enough, manifest-like a text on Art Deco.
Yeah. And he was a perfectionist in writing, I remember.
Jesus, it was it was amazing. I just revisited it the other day.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and where it actually, he was very concerned in that text with the fact that the Art Deco was you would have one thing which is very expressionistic about it, but then you will have the very classical part as well. That clash is the exact same clash you see here between the very expressionistic and the very controlled line, right? Those two things together was core to his work and to his thinking and to his way of being an artist, I think.